Good evening. I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Mary Kissel, the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal and the host of Opinion Journal, joins. Politics, Mary. There are primary contests June 3rd, next Tuesday, that are determinative for the Republican Party. Has it balanced itself after these years of turmoil with insurgencies? David Drucker of the Washington Examiner joins. David was fortuitous, clever, and very, very sophisticated to go to Mississippi right before the McDaniel-Cochran race turned into accusations and really unacceptable behavior by someone. I mean, this crowd, you've been covering this story, Mary. You know that Senator Cochran's wife has for 13 years been in a nursing home suffering with what we're told is dementia. And so she's clearly not a person who should be involved in anyone's campaign. And a man associated as a volunteer for the McDaniel, this is the insurgent, was captured, arrested, and several of his colleagues, accomplices, suspects have also been accused of breaking in, of taking photographs of the senator's wife for unclear reasons. So David was there right before and during that weekend. My first question to you, David, is what was in the air, the atmosphere of the campaign, McDaniel versus Cochran, that could have moved the McDaniel campaign, anyone in the McDaniel campaign, to make such a bad mistake? Good evening to you, David.
Good evening, John. And look, I'm really not sure because in the weeks leading up to when this incident broke into the news, the feeling both around the country and in Mississippi was that this presented conservative insurgents with their best opportunity to unseat a Republican incumbent in the Senate race. And, I met with McDaniel when I was out there, and he was upbeat. His campaign was upbeat. And I met with Cochran supporters, and they were concerned and they were worried. They still maintained that they were going to win, but it was clear to me that they were concerned about the direction of the race and the direction of the numbers, the polling that they were viewing. They didn't share it with me, but when we talked about it in sort of broad terms, it was a situation where they really thought the numbers were much better a couple of weeks before we talked, and they were heading in a particular direction that wasn't necessarily good for Cochran. And look, John, to understand this, the story broke in the news on Saturday, May 17th. The incident itself happened a couple of weeks prior. And what made this really bad for McDaniel, in my view, is not that supporters of his, people that may have volunteered to help his campaign, were involved in this. It was that the candidate and his top campaign officials didn't know how to handle this, weren't forthright about what they knew and when they knew it, and kept having to revise their story. And if they would have just been honest about what they knew and handled it very directly and forthrightly, I don't know that it would have become the liability that it quickly became.
Well, maybe that's a beginner's mistake, David. And I think it's important to add that McDaniel himself has denied connection to the break-in. But David, maybe just stepping back from this a bit, we saw the same kind of dirty tricks in Oregon with the Monica Waby campaign, where her opponent dug up some pretty ridiculous details about her private life, had nothing to do with the campaign. Is this a trend? Not a trend. I guess two examples doesn't make a trend.
Are as old as campaigns. All right, campaigns in America go hand in hand with dirty tricks since the beginning of the republic. The key is to know, what lines to cross and what not to cross, and that the candidate should not be directly involved, and the candidate should at least get their story straight. And that's been the issue here in the Mississippi case. Oregon is a bit of a different case because Webby, as we found in the results, was never in danger in that primary. And even though Merkley's a weak candidate, she still has an uphill battle in a very blue state. But this is a campaign in Mississippi where McDaniel was the insurgent, and he had to overcome Cochran and Cochran's money and his institutional support. But but he was in a decent position to do it. And if the campaign had been all about Cochran and his 6 terms and what have you done for us lately, and why aren't you fighting, and issues like that, it was in a much better place for McDaniel. Now, not only do you have the campaign all about what's wrong with McDaniel, fair or not, it's also, I think probably helped turnout for Cochran, which is huge, because it creates a sympathy vote and hey, look, he's done so much for the state, and now they're trying to exploit his poor wife, and this nice old man is working hard for us, and maybe we were tired of him, but McDaniel, it's just not the way we want to do it.
We're going to take advantage of you now, Mr. Drucker, because we know you're from California. Mary and I have been doing our homework about a California primary. It's an open primary. This is different to educate everyone who does not vote in California. This is a primary where there is no Republican primary and Democratic primary. Everybody running for governor enters into the same contest, and there's a vote next Tuesday, and the first 2 will go on to the general election. So, Mr. Drucker, we hold you responsible for this because you reported from California. You understand the water is different, the sky is different, the weather's wonderful. What the heck is going on, David? The candidate Donnelly, who looks to be leading in the polls, admittedly a lot of people haven't made up their mind. On the GOP side, is an assemblyman. However, he has made remarks that I'm told. I spoke to Neil Kashkari, the candidate who is also running as a Republican. I talked to Neil Kashkari, who tells me that Donnelly has repeated these unacceptable remarks about Mexicans, about illegal immigrants. He's been belligerent and straightforward towards immigration, which
also accused Kashkari of wanting to implement Sharia law,
actually
which is
accused
a lie.
Kashkari of being favoring Islamic, apparently not aware of the fact that Kashkari is a Hindu. But in any event, David, explain Donnelly, this phenomenon of him leading, and if the polls are right, he's going to be the Republican nominee, which is a catastrophe for the party, David.
Well, look, the Republican Party in California has been on a basically nosedive trajectory for some time. And even though they've got some very capable U.S. congressmen from the state, even though the state party chairman, Jim Brulte, is extremely capable, what has happened as the numbers of Republicans and people that tend to be conservative have shrunk in California, and they've just really shrunk. And when we think of, what kind of a voter is a conservative nationally, when we think of that, as their numbers have shrunk, they've decided to cling to the anchor. And, a party can do 2 things, and voters in a state can do 2 things. They can look for ways to broaden their appeal, or they can decide to take their ball and go home and be belligerent and prove that, nobody's going to make me change. And to prove it, I'll support this guy. Now, I think it would have helped matters if Kashkari would have been just a better candidate with a better chance for success. And his background didn't help matters. But Donnelly, it just sounds like nothing but trouble.
Really, David? I mean, I like Kashkari. I think he's a breath of fresh air.
He's 40 years old. He's new. He's decided crazily to become a politician.
He's very determined. I mean, you meet this guy and you think, man, he really wants to win.
Yeah, all of that is good, and I'm not criticizing it, but what I'm saying is that if you had somebody a little bit more conventional who didn't have TARP, written all over their back, and maybe had more of a political or private sector presence in California and the ability to really call money and support on a large scale, which he didn't, this could have been different.
Well, that would describe a candidate named Whitman, I believe. That didn't work out well, David.
It didn't go so well.
Whitman spent $200 million. It didn't go so well.
Well, she just wasn't likable, right, David? Who liked listening to her?
So we need, sort of like Mr. Potato Head, we need to pick different parts of different Republicans?
Right, but if the issue is what we're talking about and the effect of down ticket, having somebody like Whitman is a much better prospect than having Donnelly.
Lose with Whitman or lose with Donnelly. There's a choice. David Drucker.
Lose with Whitman or tank with Donnelly.
Yes, tank. That is the verb. David Drucker of the Washington Examiner. Cochran versus McDaniel, June 3rd. That's the big contest for the Republican Party. Haley Barbour's in on Cochran's side, and I like anything where Haley Barbour is rooting for it, anything at all. Mary Kissel of the editorial board of the Wall Street Journal and the host of Opinion Journal. I'm John Batchelor.